Velkommen til Akk-Oy-Vey Jødepodden. Her vil jeg, Nina Grünfeldt, sammen med gjester og venner snakke om livet og andre aktualiteter, men med et jødisk skråblikk. I første episoden av denne podden vil jeg dele en samtale med dere lyttere. Samtalen hadde jeg nylig med 4 kvinner som jeg møtte på en konferanse i Uzhgorod, Ukraina i 2019. I kjølvannet av denne konferansen dannet vi et nettverk. Joan Stein Schimke i New York City, Diti Ronen i Tel Aviv, Diana Groó i Budapest og Krystina Lenkowska i Polen på grensen til Ukraina. Etter Russlands brutale angrep på Ukraina hadde jeg et behov for å høre hva mine venner fra konferansen i Uzhgorod tenker. Samtalen fant sted på Zoom og redigert ned.
You know, it's so strange. Like, well, obviously we met in the Ukraine, right? We're all related.
What a coincidence, you know?
Right? And we're all related we're all Ukrainian in a sense, Polish, Ukrainian, Hungarian, right? And now we're all connected. So
My grandmother was transported from Ukraine, from Uzhgorod.
Yeah. My family too, from Uzhgorod. Yeah. My mother's family.
So it's Krystina in Poland, it's Diti in Tel Aviv, and Joan in Harlem, New York. Okay, so why don't we start with you, Krysha, because you are in Poland. You're actually so close to the Ukrainian border, and you even have Ukrainian refugees in your house as we are speaking. Can you just tell us a little bit about what the situation is like for you and for the people in your house?
I'm getting used to these American and British and Polish airplanes over my head, non-stop. Diti, I can't imagine living with this sound non-stop. It's not only so close to the border, but because of this. So we had officials coming, like today, the representative of the President of Biden of America. Today, our president yesterday, and we hear all those sirens because of the police protecting the officials.
Are you scared anything will happen to Poland as well?
I was worried, and I was corresponding even with Joan about it, that when I learned that Putin made his soldiers destroy the tomb of Chernobyl, and I'm so close we are close to Chernobyl too, I was afraid of the atomic dust. And still they are circling over the Chernobyl all the time, which is and to show them, look, we have the power. We may ruin Europe, even the whole Europe.
But you seem quite calm. You don't seem very traumatized or worried yet.
No, I went through Chernobyl. We were drinking Lugol, drinks to avoid some diseases. It's funny, because the family I'm having here, they left the apartment in Ivano-Frankivsk.
Where is that?
Ivano-Frankivsk is even further than Lviv. And the people from Kharkiv, which is almost destroyed at the moment, are fleeing Kharkiv. And they Vladimir and Maria, they offered their apartment for the Kharkiv people to stay there. And people from Kharkiv feel safe in Ivano-Frankivsk, despite of the bombing that started on the first day of the war. And Vladimir and his family feel safe here in Rzeszów. And we do not feel safe here, So it's the matter of perspective, how you look at it.
Very interesting. Yeah. So, okay, Diti, what is it like in Israel right now? How is the story about what's happening in Ukraine being told in Israel?
It's very, very dramatic. Like in Shabbat, normally we don't have airplanes, we don't have landings and departures, but it was like a airy train all Shabbat because thousands of Ukrainians are coming. I think at the beginning it was a call for all the Israelis to come out and they were picked out of Ukraine, and then the Jews were picked out of Ukraine, but now refugees. Now they are not any more Jews because all the Jews already came, and the Ukrainian people just coming by mass in an airy train. And one after the other, they're landing here. It's all the time in the news. You know that Ukraine is it's like the cradle of our culture. All the leaders came from Ukraine. David Ben-Gurion, who was the first prime minister, was from Ukraine, and the culture, most of the poets, most of the composers, dancers, Bialik, who is the national poet, is from Ukraine. So we have this feeling of attachment and belonging.
You know, they bombed the symbol in Babi Yar. They bombed Babi Yar, and that Babi Yar was the place where there was this huge massacre in 1941, I believe, where they killed 30,000 Jews or more just in a couple of days. So it's this mass grave, and still, if you dig into the soil, you will find, remains of human beings. And there is this big symbol that was there memorizing the Holocaust, and now it was bombed. Was that an accident, or was it something that was... how is that story being told in Israel?
It was all replanned, and so now bombing it's really shocking.
What does that tell us, that they do that?
It tells us that the Jewish pointer is always there. I believe they have all the skills and the tools to direct their bombs to the right aim and not to the wrong aim.
Well, but still, we always know that there are casualties, and that they miss at least that's a big discussions here, how accurate are actually the bombing. And would, for instance, Babi Yar, I mean, fortunately, at least we're not talking about people being killed, but it's very strong symbolism in the thing that's happening. And would that be something that was wanted, or was it accidental?
But I think they were trying to bomb a TV station tower.
Yeah.
So it was supposed to be like an attack on something strategic for the Russians, and instead they hit the tower, but then they also hit the memorial site. So I don't think they were aiming to hit this memorial site. I think it was, but that's the problem with war and bombings that are supposed to be strategic. You can't always have things go exactly as you want, right?
So Joan, how's the war being narrated in the States?
Well, it's on every station. I think people are just completely horrified. You can, it's on CNN, it's on even Fox, it's on the New York Times, it's on everywhere. And it's just shocking to be able to see the war happen in real time, even so far away as the United States. But I also have to say that the outpouring of support for the Ukrainians has been incredible. I don't think many people knew about the Ukraine and the history of the Ukraine, and the fact that it's only been a nation, an independent nation for 30 years, since 1991. And now people in America are learning about not just the Ukraine, but just the whole region, and what this means strategically for the world, right? Like, okay, a big country is trying to take over a smaller country. What does that mean for the rest of democratic nations? And that's what Zelensky is really trying to bring about, this awareness that this is why we're fighting. We're not just fighting for us, we're fighting for the world, and what this means for the world, it's enough. And I think that people in America who are very much about freedom and democracy are relating to this and just understanding the powers and the power of democracy and what it really means. So I'm glad that that's all happening. I'm not glad that this war is happening, of course. For those of us who have deep roots in the Ukraine, as you had said, or Diti, my family is from the Ukraine, not just on my mother's side, but also my father's side, who, his grandparents were from Bukovina, which is in the southern part of the Ukraine. My mother was from the western part of the Ukraine, closer to Uzhgorod and Mukac, because and the Ukraine has this history of, first it was Ukraine, then it was Czechoslovakia, then it was Hungary, now it's the Ukraine again, then it was Russia. So there's so much there, and I think that so many people in the U.S. their families are immigrants, and many, not just Jewish families, but other families too, came from this part of the world. So I think there's a great interest and a great need and desire to help out as much as we can. Mm-hmm. So, and also it turns out my husband's family, who are originally from Germany, they ended up in Odessa, right? Mm-hmm. And for like over 100 years, they were farmers in that part of the Ukraine. And then they ended up moving to Eastern Washington. So, I don't know, just very, very deep roots on my part of the family. And I'm sure for many other people in the United States can relate to that.
A lot of the discussion going on here now is about all the oligarchies, the rich people. And I don't know if you've thought about that, but I've been kind of worried that people will talk about Abramovich and Friedman and Mikhail Khodorkovsky, or whatever his name is, who's now in Switzerland, and their Jewish background. And then somebody told me the other day that they were wished welcome to Israel. Of course, I mean, if they're Jewish, any Jew could come to Israel. But there was this undertone that it would be that Israel would welcome them because of the money that they would bring to Israel. But it worries me a little bit that there will be some kind of an anti-Semitic undertone to this thing. Has this been picked up in Israel, in the States, in Poland?
Not in Israel, because here, we get all the Jews now. Israel is a place where they can come. They can be saved.
But what you're also saying is that many of the refugees coming to Israel are not necessarily Jews. They're just Ukrainians. They're refugees. And Israel as a country are accepting not just Jewish refugees, but any refugee from Ukraine.
Yes.
I think that's a really important state to make, because, in Norway, which for many reasons, and some of them I agree and some of them I don't, are quite critical towards Israel. And those are the kind of news that will never be told in Norway, that there are actually refugees, any refugees.
And it's something that, the news here is all about Ukraine all the time. Mm. And the talk that I hear on the news is, of course, we know what it means to be under attack. We know what it means to be a refugee. We know what it means to need a safe place. So yes, they are well.
But I want to go back a little bit on the issue about this war and what that actually means for Jewish communities around the world. And then I'm thinking about what is the impact of the fact that, one, Zelensky is a Jew. He's becoming a new hero. So that's something positive so far, right? But then you have all these oligarchies, and not all of them, but maybe a little bit too many, in people's opinion, are Jewish. And maybe they know, maybe they don't. But now the focus are coming more and more towards them. Everybody by now knows that Abramovich is Jewish. He's going to sell Chelsea. He's going to use the money to help Ukraine, which is good, but people don't trust him because they just think it's a way of saving himself and his family. He has become half Israel. Another news thing that I didn't know before now was that all these oligarchies has bought UK passports. They have bought passports everywhere, also, in Crete and places where they can have a EU citizenship. So it's very obvious now that this Russian nomenclaturia, as we call it, the oligarchy system is so corrupt and it's so unfair. And of course, any Jew or non-Jew within that should be responsible for whatever he or she has stolen from the Russian population. They sit on all the values.
How many of these oligarchs are Ukrainian? Are they mainly Russian, or are they also
Russian? I guess they're mainly, Friedman is actually born in Ukraine. So I think he grew up partly, at least, in Ukraine. He has actually been critical towards Putin. And of course, this Mikhail Khodorkovsky, he was the first one, right? So he was in prison for about 13 years and he lost all his fortune and now he's in Switzerland. But what I'm trying to emphasize on is what is the impact for the Jewish world that this war is going on? Is it, maybe it's not going to mean anything, or will there actually have a consequence? I mean, what we know is that the Russians has always been anti-Semitic. Ukraine has been a huge anti-Semitic country. Of course, not everybody, but we know the story. Our grandparents, our families were killed there by the Nazis and by the Ukrainians, by the Nazis and by the Russians. Jews get killed, and when there's a war and when there's a conflict, the Jews comes in between, either because they are the hero, like Zelensky, suddenly he will be killed too, but not only because he's the head of Ukraine, but also because he's a Jew. And these oligarchies, they will be haunted because they are rich and they're Jews. So I'm scared.
And Nina, they will also be blamed for the war.
That's right. Well, what I'm hoping is that the attention right now is just on the war and the suffering of the Ukrainian people. But I agree, it's the fact that there are a large number of oligarchs who are Jewish. What will that mean? I think that remains to be seen. And I think maybe more of that will come out after, hopefully the war will be over or it'll stop soon. But I don't know if that's a focus right now. Definitely in the back of my mind as well, what is going to come out of this and the attention that they're getting. The fact that Abramovich, though, is selling Chelsea and is donating all the proceeds to the Ukrainians is actually a good thing on many, many levels.
I have to tell you that in Israel, it is completely not an issue. It's not discussed. I hear it from you.
It's not an issue at the moment. Poland, especially places like mine, which is the border, place, we have a lot of difficult, historical feelings, euphemism, between Polish people and Ukrainian, Polish people and Jewish people, Polish people, Russian people, Polish people, German people. Very, very, very delicate. And even there are not only anti-Semitic people in Poland, but there are many people who do not like Ukrainians. And there are many banderowcy, we call somebody, who don't like the Polish, because when Poland was a rich country and the Ukraine was almost like coming as a country and as a nation starting, they were very poor and very often they were servants to the Polish people. So they hated the Polish people and the Polish people were using them as well, Of course, there were mixed marriages, like my great-grandfather was Ukrainian, by the way. And my family left nowadays Ukraine in 1945 because they felt themselves Poles, so they left Ukraine because they knew they were going to be under the Russian, boot. And when the war finished, 1945, there were here, where I live, very near the Bieszczady Mountains, there were still fights going on between the Polish and the Ukrainians. People were getting killed. But now, when the war started, despite the fact that we accepted Ukrainians, about millions of them during the last 10 years, they came here to work, of course, and they are welcome. But now almost 8,100, so close 1 million, refugees are coming here. And you can see in the news, and they are warmly welcome. They are warmly welcome, and nobody, apart from, of course, some small groups, like even in Przemyśl, near the border, nationalistic people, trying to encourage some stupid football fans to attack, hopefully not physically yet, but they were like chasing them away, the refugees and the people from all over the world, especially the Polish majority, helping the refugees. So we have some incidents.
My question is actually not in, it's kind of out of order to ask it these days, because there are totally different issues that are important. And now we have this very critical situation where it's not about the anti-Semitism, because it's not there now. It's probably more my paranoia and the worries that this will come on. But being a minority in Norway and a minority in the States, I think we think about these things in a different way. So yeah, so you have to forgive me for, bringing up a question which is probably not correct right now, but still it's something that I have to admit that I think of.
And I'm not sure that if Putin stops in Ukraine.
So what do you think about that? Is he gonna? Are you scared he's gonna come to Hungary and Poland?
Well, for me, I think, what does he have to do in Ukraine? Yeah. He has such a big country.
That's right. But the Ukraine has so many resources, and not just the oil and the gas and the ore and the food. I mean, there's so many. And the power, but I just don't understand. And when it first started happening, I don't understand Putin's end game. Like, what does he want at the end of this? Like, when is he going to stop? So that's what we worry about here in the US. And so, for example, I know Zelensky needs that no-fly zone, but we can't do that in the US, right? Because we're part of NATO and they're not part of NATO. So if we do that, that's an outright declaration of war.
No,
so it's like, we don't even know what
just got this, because what the Ukrainians are expecting from the world, from the Western world, please close the skies and save Ukraine.
Of course. I mean, what the Jews wanted in 1942 to 1945 was to bomb the railway to Auschwitz. We can never forgive the Allies for not bombing the railways to Auschwitz. But of course, you're right. If we do that, he might be so crazy he will attack the NATO countries.
We don't understand his endgame. We don't understand where he's coming from.
The only thing we can pray is that there are somebody inside the Kremlin who is brave enough to put a bullet between his eyes.
That's an idea.
I hope so. I pray every night. He is insane. He doesn't listen to anybody else but the 3 or 4 close advisors. It's so scary.
Who do whatever he says.
Yeah.
The cook who travels with him for many years, and the cook is always the first to eat. Before he tries the food.
I think, and what he does is he turns everything on its head. Like right now, he's declaring a no-fly zone over the Ukraine. So you see, it's like the escalation, and that's what's so terrifying. And it is putting the US in this position of what can we do without destroying the rest of Europe? What can we do to save the people? I feel so helpless. Like Krystina and I have been in touch, and I'm like, should I come to Poland?
Did my research for my book. I had this helper in Uzhgorod, and he escaped to Hungary now, and he has a wife, and he's really sick, and he has 2 children, and I sent him some money. He was really thankful, and he said, I have to go out to look for work.
Yeah, the question is whether they have enough food to buy. I mean, and what I see is that they are short of food, and even if they have money, right, what can they do with this money if everything is destroyed around and the infrastructure is destroyed? So,
and it's freezing cold.
Yeah, and it's freezing cold.
Because I wanted to add some Russian context here. I have a friend in Russia who is a poet, Elena Dunayevska, and she lives in Petersburg. And she still has her Facebook open. It is very important because they say the independent media in Russia are closed. All of them, the official media, but the Facebook is still open. But up till yesterday, they could give me a like when I was writing like Putin, idi nahui. You know idi nahui? This is fuck off. but it is very famous now in Ukrainian. There are road signs everywhere. In Ukraine and in Poland, everybody says, "Idi nahui, Putin, idi nahui." So up till yesterday, the Russian people, like my friend, they were like giving me a like or something. But yesterday, Duma, which is the Russian parliament, made a special declaration, how to say it, a law, that anybody who is criticizing the situation will be jailed for 15 years.
I know.
And you know, but what the Polish people were doing, sneaking around, because you cannot contact people in Russia. I myself did it twice. We find a restaurant in Moscow or Petersburg and go to their give an opinion. So we give like 2 stars or 5 stars to the restaurant. And in a comment we say, do you know there's a genocide in Ukraine? Do you know the Ukrainians are no fascist? You are being lied, you know? And people try to write different things, because if it's the same like note, the computer will, you know, throw it out. You know, it's like a basket. It's, you know, you have to write a different story, a different sentence every so often. And that's how we try to let the Russian people who are unaware of the situation, the majority of Russians, they think that you know, now they are in panic because they cannot cash the money in bankomats. The IKEA has closed, you know, many companies, and they are running, you know, there are queues, there are huge queues. You may have them soon, the Russians in Norway, because there are many of them in Finland today, and they're queuing to get to Finland.
We also have a Russian border in the north of Norway. There's a Russian border.
Yeah, you see? And we have also the Belarus people who do not accept the war. Exactly. They are escaping Belarus. So there are also refugees from Belarus in here.
And I think, you know, now we're facing all the refugees from Ukraine, but eventually there will be refugees from Russia and Belarus as well.
That's very true.
Krystina, that is brilliant.
Yeah.
And what a way to get information across.
Yeah.
But will they believe it? You know, I actually, when I demonstrated today, I went together with a Russian woman who's working for a human rights organization, and she's been one of the main commentators in Norwegian television, the public broadcasting television and radio during the last few days. And I just ended up beside her, and I just said, you know, well done, you've done a great job. And we started talking, and we stayed talking for an hour. And she was actually walking around with a picture of another Russian politician who was shot on the Red Square in front of Kremlin in 2015. He was one of the politicians that earlier on was Nemtsov. He was collecting signatures for Chechnya, and you know, probably the Red Square is the most, you know, surveyed square in Russia. And of course, they could never find the killer because it was a part of the system, of course. So she was actually walking around with his picture rather than Navalny. My point, I guess, was just that. What was my point? I don't remember anymore even where I started.
No, you talked about the woman that you talked with.
Oh yeah, of course. It is about the situation in Russia today and how people, I mean, Putin is getting paranoid, but as the Russian population is being, you know, pushed together as well, they also get paranoid. So what I'm scared is, even though we will write those messages on the restaurant home sites, maybe they won't believe that either. I mean, who will, unless they get too many of their sons and husbands back in bags. So the question is, how long is it going to take to the Russian population actually sees the other side? And how many Russian soldiers and husbands has to be killed before they say no?
And here we are reported that the Russian soldiers that are around Kiev, they don't even know that they are on this mission.
Yeah.
And they are tired and hungry and thirsty, and
their mobiles are not working, and even one killed an Ukrainian guy in the street for the mobile. because he wanted to call his mom and said, and you know, we have even recordings of the Russian soldiers who are crying, and they are recording themselves when it was still working. They're crying because they didn't know where they were going. You know, they thought that they will be greeted with flowers, that people are waiting for them.
You know, I really feel sorry for the Russian soldiers and for the Ukrainians, so for the Ukrainians as well. We are all just part of a game of a crazy man.
You know what I was thinking about as a filmmaker? I was thinking about Battleship Potemkin by Sergei Eisenstein, which was made in 1929, right? And it's about the battleship, about the soldiers on the battleship who refused to fire upon the citizens of Odessa, right? It's because they refused, you know, they didn't want to kill innocent civilians and innocent people. And because the leader of that particular ship said no more. So I think the only hope is that people under Putin, because they may not have all the information either as to what their mission is, as to what they're doing. So because we, on the outside, like we can only help the refugees, we can only give money, support, but it has to come from within, because, you know, otherwise, how do we stop this, right?
Well, if we don't stop it, will we have a third world war with a nuclear?
That's true.
Will we?
Yes.
And where is Israel in all of this? Is Israel supporting Ukraine with weapons? You are. You're sending airplanes, aren't you?
Maybe secretly, but not officially.
No.
Officially, we are afraid of the Russians because they control Syria and Iran. And if we get in fight with Russia, that's the end of Israel in 2 minutes.
Really?
Definitely.
Why can't Israel is David and Russia is Goliath? Why can't you beat Goliath?
It will take only one bomb to finish the state of Israel.
That's right. One bomb.
Just one bomb.
Everything is gone.
Yeah. You see, we have experienced missiles for years. We can deal with missiles.
But you have shields.
But the shields will not stay still when the atomic bomb is here.
They can't shut down the atomic bomb.
No.
No. So if an atomic bomb is being pulled out, nothing can stop it? Another atomic bomb? Can they meet up in the sky?
And kill all the universe.
I don't know what happens then. I mean, is that even possible?
I don't know. I'm not into these, thoughts, but I know that Israel officially does not support Ukraine, unfortunately. And it is said that it is unfortunately.
What do you mean? Israel does not?
It is said officially that unfortunately we cannot support Ukraine.
Yeah, okay. I get it. Officially.
We don't know. We don't know what happens unofficially.
That's right.
We don't know what happens under the cover, but officially it is completely like we don't want to get in mess with the Russians, because his strategic is first to conquer Ukraine, then to settle down in Ukraine, and from there to go on. Look what Hitler did. He didn't do it in one day.
No.
He made it piece by piece.
Yeah.
You know, I don't envy the diplomats from around the world who have to make these really difficult decisions, like to be responsible for figuring out what the world order is going to be. What is to be done?
And mistakes, a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
Their body language was a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Putin would never appreciate people being friendly. He
Never.
thinks being friendly means accepting.
That's
you
right.
know, smiling means accepting and appreciating and even admiring.
Mm-hmm.
He is crazy. He wants to be the Tsar of at least big Russia.
Yeah.
And the church in Russia supports him. So he can imagine himself having this crown like a Tsar one day.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about Ukraine, he despises Ukrainians. He looks down at him, like Hitler despised the Jews. He thinks that Ukrainians are worse people. They are not real human. And he's been talking this language for many years, and many diplomats could hear this many times and did nothing.
Ukraine decided to be neutral, not to belong to NATO, and to keep neutrality.
It's not true.
That's what I read.
They wanted to be European country. They wanted EU and NATO.
Only later, but not at the first. They wanted to be in peace with Russia.
Yanukovych, he was the vassal of Russia.
Many reasons, but at the end of the day, they kept themselves, be in peace with Russia and be in peace with the rest of the world, which means, not to act any action. And it raises this question about neutrality, about not taking an action or being too worried about what happens if you take an action.
That's not true, Diti. 2014, the action was, there were many victims. We went half a year later to Kiev, only half a year later. Maidan, I've just watched the film Maidan on Netflix. You can see it. And Yanukovych, after 90 days of the fight, had to escape in a helicopter. Yanukovych and only his generals pretended to be neutral, but the people were not neutral at all. They're fighting like hell.
Okay, but
Krystina, are you saying then it was a mistake for the Ukraine to want to become part of NATO? Because that sort of rattled.
They simply were trapped. Even when the Soviet Union finished, Russia was clever enough to send Yanukovych, who was, you remember the palace of Yanukovych, all in gold, when eventually the Ukrainians, finished his ruling. He was the Russian guy. And he pretended Ukraine was democratic.
Right.
It hasn't been democratic since the very beginning, almost.
Okay. That's right.
Hi from Budapest.
Hi,
It's great to see you.
Nice to see you.
Everything has changed. And now I think all the Ukrainians find Zelensky as a hero, as a persona. It has changed so much.
But after Jesus, Zelensky will be the second Jew where all the world will celebrate as a hero. Really, I'm really so happy for this, and actually I really admire his patriotism. I am not sure I could do the same in my country. I'm so happy that it's recorded, Nina. You know what I am saying? So it's even can change also the question of anti-Semitism, also the question of racism and xenophobia, because Zelensky, I think he's the way he's speaking, the human way he's speaking. I mean, never ever seen before a politician speaking like this by heart. All of them, from the liberal to the conservative parties, my experience was from my very childhood that every time I could hear that they are kind of reciting a text, and it doesn't come, the words don't come in a human way. And Zelensky, just really, wow, I think he's a really hero.
Diana, but you are our representative in Budapest. So tell us, what is the situation like? Tell us a little bit about Orban and how the situation is.
Okay, so what we faced, that actually to Budapest there are less refugees are coming, so on the arriving, because at the train station mainly those people arrive who want to get a flight somewhere else to connect their families. many people are at the borders, and they are. But what I feel, because we will have election in April, that actually the opposition became stronger and stronger. So although we have state media, just like in Russia, everyone is, I mean, normal people. I think maybe I am optimistic, I don't know, but I really, truly, strongly feel that there are much more people who are against Orban, who do not support Orban. And there is a very interesting, actually, Orban's, my opinion, that for Putin, Orban's visit was a really good something to show to the European Union that here is a guy, we are negotiating in a good friend, we are in good friendship, and this could be a kind of example for the other European countries that where the dialogues exist. But on the same time, Putin even himself didn't think about this seriously, and this is a kind of, I think, the element of show that Orban has an important role. He doesn't count. I think he doesn't count here, and he even doesn't count for Putin. I don't know if you understand what I am saying. Hungary is a very little country. So actually, also, I tell you sincerely, all my friends, people around me, I know they are thinking how to move from here. We are not at the moment in danger, but actually if Putin succeeds.
Krystina, we haven't
because
really heard
what
anything
I
about
hear
the dialogue
from
between
Dini
your president or
is that,
prime minister and Putin.
after
So what is
Ukraine,
the relation between
Hungary
the
comes.
Polish
After
government now and Putin?
I guess the Baltic states, then maybe Poland.
Maybe first, because the Baltic states have a lot of ammunition. Yes, they are full of NATO. For Putin, after Ukraine, he goes into Hungary, and he's in the center of Europe.
Yeah, actually, I tell you really frankly, everyone is thinking where to go now. We were thinking about where to go, to Berlin, to Vienna. Yeah, but not only me, but everyone around me thinking about
where to go
to prepare the passports.
Not just prepare, you have to go, because, you know, we learned that the sooner you go, the better.
Somehow I really think, or I just do hope that that people in Europe now quite united. And
are you afraid, Diana, Dini? I mean, when Diti says that she does better sooner than later, what does that make you think?
This is a common topic, just like the Holocaust. You know, even on Christmas we are talking about the Holocaust, and also when to prepare the suitcases. So it's actually today. Did you follow the news that Bennett is visiting Putin? Diti, you know that?
No, I didn't know.
Who's
I'm here, not on the news.
Who didn't?
Prime Minister, Israeli
Prime Minister, which is very good news. I think for me, it's a very, very good news, because he might, I think, convince. I don't know how. You don't think, Diti?
Be clear, Dini. Why do you think it's a good idea that he's there? And Diti, tell us afterwards why you think it's nothing is going to come out of it.
First of all, in Ukraina, there are many Jewish people. Really, the Jewish population was really high even after the war. We were talking about that Zelensky is a hero now, independently if he's Jewish or not. But in this I mean, concerning this, I think it's important. Why? Because Zelensky himself can prove that actually anti-Semitism Nazism does not exist in Ukraine. Also, escaping Jewish people from Ukraine to Israel. Now, hundreds are escaping, arriving from Ukraine to Israel. They say, and they can confirm that actually they had not faced anti-Semitism, for example, you know. Mm-hmm. So this is a kind of key a card in Bennett's hand to convince him. I don't know, maybe I'm naive. I'm not politician.
But you know, actually, I just looked it up here on, it actually says on the internet that according to European Jewish Congress, there's between 360 and 400,000 Jews in Ukraine today. I didn't know. I didn't know there were that many Jews left.
I think Putin has interests in Israel, so he agreed to accept Bennett. He also wants to keep his interests in Israel. It's really a very strategic location where we are. So like this, we can be destroyed. It's better for him to, you know, to try and see if he can use this connection for his own benefit. Putin is unpredictable and
So Krystina, tell us a little bit about the Polish.
When the war in Ukraine started, Kaczynski disappeared. Kaczynski and his court, you know, you don't see him in the media anywhere. But the Poland is represented for the time being by the president, which is the right wing as well, our Andrzej Duda. And we call all of them the regime guys. But in fact, the two who are representing Poland for the time being are helping Ukraine. But Kaczynski and his awful guys are hidden somewhere. And we don't know why. Officially, Poland supports Ukraine.
Exactly. But, you know, I just find it interesting that in our news, we have heard so much about how all the neighboring countries of Ukraine and Russia and Belarus is, you know, what kind of statements they have. And we haven't heard anything from Poland. And Poland would be the obvious country where the statesman, the president or the prime minister would come out and say something.
Yeah, officially, like Orban refused to alienate Russia and Putin, we officially alienate Russia, help Russia military, let Americans and British and other Western, you know, armies in. We let all the Ukrainians in with a great help, especially on the part of the common people, obviously. But the rhetoric of the president and the prime minister is that we are helping, supporting Ukraine and alienating Russia and criticizing Russia. Totally.
May I read you the news?
Yeah.
First on the news, Israel will establish a field hospital in Lviv next week, which is a very big field hospital.
In Lviv.
It will have different departments for children and adults, also trauma, giving birth, labor, and first aid. So that's the top news in Haaretz.
And I tell you, I was very, very angry when the first reaction of the European Film Academy was that let's boycott the Russian filmmakers. I was so angry. The same anger I felt in May when Israel was bombed by the Hamas rockets and the ITFA Amsterdam Film Festival, what I really like and love and appreciate. The first reaction was that let's boycott Israeli films. And I said, come on, Israeli films are made by Arabic and Israeli filmmakers.
They are activists. They are all activists.
But you know, that is actually not what is happening here, because we're having huge discussions about that as well. And of course, Norway is a sports nation, and we have banned all the sports. So Russian sports cannot come here, which I am. But what they're saying is when it comes to the arts and when it comes to music and literature, we should keep a dialogue. So it seems to me that this is not actually going to be a big issue, at least not here in Norway or in the Nordic countries. But my last thing I wanted to take up is we had a plan to meet in Berlin in April. Is that going to be possible at all? I mean, one thing is for individually for each and one of us, but now there's a war going on.
I think I was afraid, you know, what's going to happen? How big is it going to get? But also, will I be able to get home? But so I might have to go through Norway or something. So I would love to go. I'd love to see all of you in person. And
may I just ask all of us before we say bye, just to say a prayer for peace and for the people all over the world, both Russian and Ukrainian and everybody else, not to suffer and to have peace. Thank you.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you too. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So hard.
Takk for at du lyttet til Akk-Oy-Vey Jødepodden, som støttet av Fritt Ord. Musikken laget av Jens Wendelboe.